Hello and welcome to another Warhammer the Old World video. Today I'm going to be painting a Goblin Spider Rider mob. So there's 10 miniatures in total and I'm going to paint the spiders and riders separately to the bases. My theory being that they should be easier to complete by themselves. So I'm going to start with the bases and then while they're drying I can get on with painting the miniatures. I've added some PVA to an old jam jar lid and I'm now adding some brown paint to the PVA. This is purely for aesthetics purposes. I intend to cover these bases with the PVA mixed brown paint and then a mixture of sand and grit over the top of that. You'll see here exactly what I do. Once I've all 10 bases done, this is exactly what I've done. I have just sprinkled some reasonably fine grade sand and some heavier grade grit over the top and then just put them to the side and leave them to dry. I'm now moving on to the spider riders and I'm going to give them a good healthy coat of Nuln Oil. You'll see me doing this with all the miniatures I paint recently. This is my new preferred method of painting. It's like a pre-shade I'm doing to the models. Because of the colours I have chosen for these models, this was actually probably not really a necessary step and could easily be missed out. You'll also see that these miniatures do not like sticking to the blue tack that I use on top of paint pots, but that's okay, we can hold them in our hands when we're painting. You'll see when I start painting the reason why this was a kind of an unnecessary step, at least with regards to the spiders. The riders, of course, are a different matter. This is a good step to do to the riders, the goblins, on top of the spiders. But as I've stated, you could quite easily avoid wasting, which is essentially what I'm doing, some Nuln Oil by not coating the spiders, just the riders. So the models have had plenty of time to dry. It does take a while and I'm now going to come in with some white. In my case I use Vallejo's Dead White and I'm going to give the Nuln Oiled miniatures a healthy dry brush, and again this is to give me a white base to paint over. I like to use speed paints and contrast paints, as anybody who watches this channel will know. And they like to go over a white base coat. They don't really like to go over any other base coat. Some people will put them over a grey base coat, or I don't know, some people maybe even try to paint over black with them, but it's just doesn't work. It's not going to work. So stick to doing what they're designed to do, and that is paint over white. So with all the dry brushing completed, it's now time to move on to my first colour, which is going to be Grim Black. And I'm going to use this Grim Black to put a coating on the spiders. You're now going to see why the Nuln Oil step was unnecessary on the spiders, because the black paint's going to do just a much heavier version of the same thing. So in reality you didn't really need to hit the spiders themselves with the Nuln Oil. Just the goblins on top. I've seen some paint jobs where people have painted these spiders bright colours, and whilst that's viable and entirely up to yourself, I've chosen to keep them dark. Now they will get colour added to them, but they're going to come from a black base colour. It's just the way I see spiders. They're more sinister and creepy that way, and that's just my personal preference. So with all the spiders with a coating of black on them, I'm now coming back in again with the white paint, and I'm going to give them a lighter dry brush now in selected areas, and there's a reason for that which you'll see in later steps. The dry brush gets used quite extensively in painting these miniatures. You'll get plenty of practice if you follow the way I've painted them. There are of course many alternative ways of painting these miniatures. This is just the way I'm choosing to do it. And now to add my first colour to the spiders, and that colour is going to be Murder Scene, which is a blackish, purplish, reddish colour. It's very dark, and you'll now begin to see why I did the white dry brush, and that is to add more colour to the black. You can kind of see it here, you can kind of see the effect I'm going for. When it dries, they're slightly darker than this, but I quite like the effect that it gives. So for 3 or 4 more of these 10 spiders, I'm going to use Tyrian Navy, which is a dark blue black. And again, the white dry brush over the black is going to help bring out this colour in select areas, and that's exactly what I'm going for. I don't want the spiders just to be completely black, but I do want them to be very dark. And the last colour I'm going to choose is Burnt Moss, which is a greeny black colour. And again, it's very suitable, I think, for giant spiders. You'll see here that these spiders don't like staying on top of these paint pots that I'm using to hold them. That's okay, there's a nice wee goblin hanging on to the spiders, and it actually makes it quite easy to hold them and paint them at the same time. I've now got the spiders and the bases done to a suitable level where I can glue the spiders to the bases. And I'm now on to the riders, and the first colour I'm going to use is Ghilie Dew, and I'm going to use it to paint their skin. Anyone who has watched my channel before will know I really like this colour for goblins. I think it just suits them. You can't really go wrong in this step either. Just take your time, use a decent brush and put a bit of paint on where you think there's skin. Because we have used the Nuln Oil to pre-shade, you can kind of see the detail a bit better. There isn't a great deal of detail on these miniatures, but there is enough. I'm now moving on to the shields and the spear shafts, and I'm going to use Rudy Fur, a colour that I have found imitates wood quite well. The shields on these miniatures are embossed. The design on them is embossed, which makes it quite easy to paint them. I'm going to paint the designs a different colour to the shields, but I do think that they should have wooden shields. They are forest goblins after all. They wouldn't have access to an awful lot of metal in my mind. So wood it is for the shields. Moving away from Army Painter speed paints and onto Citadel's contrast, I'm going to use Snakebite Leather, and I'm going to use this to paint what little clothing there is on these goblins. It's really just a loincloth, a little bit of cloth in some of their chests, and that's about it. I'm also going to paint the piece of rope that holds the spear shaft to the spear head. I'm now going to paint the spear tips, and I'm going to use Broadsword Silver from the Army Painter Speed Paints range. This is a really nice metallic colour that I've used extensively in my recent miniature painting exploits. It just paints on really well, and it's quite effective. A lot of metallics are hit and miss. The Hoplite Gold and the Broadsword Silver from Army Painter are really nice. Some of the shields have an embossed spider on them, and some of them have embossed mushrooms on them. I'm going to paint the head of the mushrooms with red, and I'm going to paint the spiders with red, and this is really just to add a little bit of colour to these miniatures. I'm also going to paint the goblin's eyes red and the spider's eyes red. You'll notice that I've already hit the spider's eyes with white and the goblin's eyes with white. Again, that's because I'm using speed paints, and they really do like to go over white. Otherwise they'll look very washed out and you won't even really notice that they're red. I'm now going to use Nuln Oil again. Again, it's a Citadel shade, and I'm going to use it to paint the white feathers that are in the miniatures. I'll also paint the white areas where their teeth are. And this is just to add some definition. Try and break the stalk and the hairs on the feathers up a little bit. Make them look more feathery. You could paint these feathers different colours if you wish. I just didn't want to have too many colours on these miniatures. With the spiders being quite colourful and the shields being quite colourful, I didn't want them to be over the top. Back in with the white paint again, and now I'm going to give a final dry brush to the spiders. This is a step you could miss if you wanted to. I just want to bring out some of the detail, so I'm choosing to a very light dry brush in a few selected areas of each spider, and again it just makes them pop a little bit, I think. If you have coloured inks at your disposal, you could come in now with some coloured inks and go over this white with an ink to make your spiders very bright and colourful. I'm choosing not to do that. And finally, I'm onto the bases again. Because I've done most of the groundwork to the bases, I'm now only going to be adding some static grass and some tufts. You'll see here that I just hit some select areas of each base with some PVA glue. Do all 10 at once. Saves you time. Also make sure you've got something put down to catch your static grass on, because it's reasonably expensive and it does get everywhere, and you do want to save it as much as you can. So I siphon it back into the container again once I'm done. You can buy a static grass applicator which will apply this grass and make sure it's standing up. I quite like static grass to look trodden on and to be pointing in all directions, so I choose not to use an applicator for this purpose. And that's it. Miniature's done to, as far as I'm concerned, a tabletop standard. They will certainly do me. They will do my Orc and Goblin army. Hopefully you like them. I certainly do. And I look forward to painting the next unit. Hopefully you have got something out of this video, even if it's just a little bit of inspiration or a little bit of I can do this. You really can. It's a very simple job. Once you've got your colour palette chosen, it's just a matter of following simple steps from A to B and you'll get there. They're not hard to paint. I wouldn't want to be painting 4 and 5 units of them, but if I had to, it wouldn't be a difficult job either. I'll ask you to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and ring the wee bell icon and you'll see my next Old World videos, which will be up very soon. Thank you for watching.